call tonight's public hearing to order. Tonight's public hearing involves the proposed Quality of Life Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 3411 to amend the land use map from open space and parks to residential at 700 Green Street, and proposed zoning amendment bylaw number 3412 to allow multiple family residential RM2 zone at 700 Green Street for the purposes of seniors housing. So before we get into the public hearing, I just want to read a brief statement. Public hearing is organized according to Section 890 of the Local Government Act. Every person present who believes that their interest is affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard, respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Prior to speaking, please provide your full name and be prepared to spell your name for the corporate administrator, and please provide your residential or business address. Members of council may ask questions, but please note that this is not a question period at which a debate takes place. Should no additional speakers present themselves, I will call 3 times for anyone else to speak to the matter, and if no one else comes forward, then the public hearing will be adjourned. So with that, I'd like to call upon the city planner to provide his report on the proposed amendments.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned, the bylaws received second reading at July 12th regular council meeting, and a public hearing was scheduled then. The report presented at that time to the council is current, and it's included in its entirety in attachment number 1. Very briefly, the subject property is located between 7th Avenue East and 6th Avenue East along 3rd, and it's addressed from Green Street. Our aerial photographs still show the old King Edward School. The property has been cleared since then, and it's been ready for construction for a new project. The proposal is for 42 senior citizen housing units specifically. There will be 2 pods of 16 and 10 townhouses. There's going to be ample landscaping, walkways, gardening places, and all of the parking will be provided on site. In fact, more than what's necessary by the our zoning bylaw. Applicant conducted the information meeting May 15th. 34 people signed in. I was present at that meeting. I believe there were more people that came in who didn't sign. 20 individuals completed feedback, of which 19 were in favor of the project. Staff noted an ample conversation about residents' age. Staff requested a covenant stating the minimum age, which has been completed, received satisfactory review by city lawyer, and it's included in attachment 2. And the applicant selected the age of 65 as a minimum age for being resident in a complex. Staff conducted internal referrals, and there were no comments that would prevent completion of amendments. Staff also conducted an external referral to Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, which signed off on the proposed zoning bylaw. Public notices were mailed out within the radius of 100 meters from the subject property and published in the local papers. As of the date of this report, we did not receive any comments. However, this morning at 10 a.m., I received one comment which has been distributed prior to the council meeting for your viewing. Subject to the proposed bylaw receiving the final approval of this project requires development permit and development variance permit, which are also included on this report. In conclusion, Your Worship, the applicant has completed the necessary requirements for final consideration. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. So now, at this time, I noticed that there's a a representative of the developer in attendance. I'm wondering if they want to make a statement to the public hearing. Oh, sorry, Councillor Niche.
I just got one question. One question. Did you say that the proponent changed it to 65? Because I know when we had the discussion last time, we had said 55, but they've agreed on the 65 now? Is that what you're saying?
Sorry. Yes. Basically, what my point was at the Glass Council meeting, and when we were at the public information meeting, is that we have two numbers that we are working with. We have 55 and 65. It is really we are creating land use rules here. We're not deciding as to who is a senior by a certain standard. You know, they can do projects can define different age groups as long as Council is assured that it's going to be for seniors. And I would suggest that 65 will be for seniors.
Thanks very much. So if the developer would like to come up and make a quick statement.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody that is able to come. I'll keep it brief. Sano did a really good job of summarizing the process. It's been a good process. I want to thank council and staff for working with us on the project and making it the best it can be. We've gone to quite a bit of effort, hopefully, to hear the community and incorporate their views into the project with the 3 focus groups that we had over the summer and the public open house and this whole process. So I hope that people feel heard. We've done our best to try to incorporate the community's wishes and what we think the demand and need is for seniors housing in the community. Thank you kindly, everybody.
Thanks very much. And so with that, I'd like to open the floor to any members of the public who feel that their interests are affected by this proposed bylaw. I'll call a second time for any members of the public who wish to speak to this proposed development. And I'll call a final time if anyone wishes to speak towards this development. All right, seeing no one, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Randawa, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Any opposed? No. Okay, motion carried. So with that, I'd like to call tonight's regular meeting of Council to order, with the first order of business being to suspend the regular meeting and convene Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Motion carried. So I'd like to call tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting to order. First item of business is adoption of the agenda. Recommendation that the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting of June 26th be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Motion carried. So we come to item 3A, petition from Luann Roth, North Coast Energy Campaigner with the T. Buck Suzuki Environmental Foundation regarding the Aurora LNG project. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks. I can just scroll it down. And do I push this?
It's on right now. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Well, hello, everybody. I know most of you, but I've been working this year on the Aurora LNG assessment, and I've been helping to organize experts because we have funds for experts to review it for community groups. And that's for the T. Buck Suzuki Environmental Foundation, the Prince Rupert Environmental Society, the United Fishermen and Allied Workers Union, Unifor, and I've also been assisting the Dodge Cove Improvement District just with the air quality issues in the working group. And so that the main issue that I want to talk to you about, and the one that's raising the most concern with us, is that the air quality, according to our experts, is going to exceed the government guidelines for human health, the objectives for human health, in areas of Prince Rupert, residential areas, and in Dodge Cove. And I'll just the one area that our expert measured and came up with figures for was Graham Avenue Child Care Center. And I just want to say that, emphasize that the air there is great. No, it's no problem. It's safe now. This is only if the project goes ahead. The compound is nitrogen dioxide. It's a dangerous air contaminant. It's associated with smog and acid rain, and it produces short and long-term health problems. And as part of the environmental assessment, the concentration of NO2, which will result from Aurora LNG, is estimated, and then it's added to the forecasts that are going to be here from existing projects and from the expansion, say, of Fairview Terminal. So it's all added together, and then it's compared to the human health objective. So one of the crucial parts of the calculation is the percentage of NO2 that's going to come out of the stacks, and that's where the issue has arisen. And I'm just going to explain, even though it's technical, just to give you an idea that it's not just our experts, but there is a real problem here. So Aurora estimated that there would be 10% coming out of the stacks, right? And what our experts tell us is that 30% is actually what should be used as the estimate. And many of you remember the Prince Rupert Airshed study that was completed December 2016, and it used 30% for that calculation. And it was done by the BC Ministry of Environment and Trinity Consultants, which is a really well-respected, internationally respected consulting firm. And then Dodge Cove Improvement District got Trinity Consultants in March of this year just to look at the turbines that Aurora is going to use, the specific one that they mentioned, Siemens 600, and asked them what's the percentage we should use for the NO2 coming out of its stacks, and they came up with 32%. So they looked at it specifically, and it's a really huge project. Most of you probably know, but a lot of people don't realize just how many emissions are going to come out and how much gas is going to be burned. And just the magnitude of this project is like a big power plant, or if you've heard about Sumas 2 or something. So, that's why these emissions added on to what we already have is an issue. So Gordon Esplin, Genesis Engineering, he's got 30 years of experience. He's worked for government, BC government, and industry, and he's the one that's really reviewed it carefully and said it's 30%, and that's the memo I sent around to all of you, so you have, and his CV is there too. So Aurora used 10%, and they were backed up by a member of the Ministry of the Environment who said they could use 10% too. And he's a member of the LNG task force. And just, to be fair and understand why they use 10% is that it used to be okay, to use 10%. And what's happened is that more and more evidence is coming forward about the short-term, the effects from short-term exposure are a lot higher than people thought, and we're getting more and more evidence of that. And so prior to 2014, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency that we all look at as a standard, they said it was okay to use 10%. But in 2014, they started recommending that you should use 50% unless you have evidence to describe your specific source. And so just, that's what, what that Trinity looked at and said the specific source was 32%. Our experts looked at them. So when we brought this forward to Aurora, Nexen, right, the proponents, they said that they came up with a list of stacks and said, oh, the average is 10% of all these stacks, and we have the data. And when we went back and checked that set of data, the EPA has a page where you can, on the website, where you can pick up data sets, and it has two. One is the one that's been approved for use, and one is the one that has been rejected. And they say none of the data fully satisfy the requirements for the formal collection effort, and that's the sheet that Aurora used. So anyway, so the percentage of NO2 coming out of the stacks is especially important for nearby residents, because once it goes 10 kilometers or more, it starts to just even out and dissipate, right? But the reason I brought this is just to show the distance to, like, this area here in Prince Rupert, Graham Avenue, Atlin, and that, to here, the emissions, it's only 3 or 4 kilometers. So it's really close. And, Dodge Cove goes really close too, closer. And, let's see if I could scroll. Just to show you, there's the Fairview terminal. So there's a lot of emissions going to be coming from there too. And I'll just see if I can. I don't know how I got down last time. Oh. So this is from Graham Avenue, sort of looking pretty much towards it, a little bit to the right is where the Aurora plant will be. I just wanted to show you that steep, mountain there, because that has an effect of, funneling. And then you can see there that, the mountain there, and the red dot is where the NO2 concentrations will be the highest, because, it's right by Fairview, but it's overlapping the two. So, I don't know if I mentioned, but the Graham Avenue Child Care Center was actually higher when Gordon Esplin did the analysis than Dodge Cove, and it's because that we already have a significant amount of emissions, and especially once Fairview increases, right? So, maybe, my feeling is I'd sooner have the container facility expand, for a third time, but than limiting it in this way. So I do want to say that this shouldn't go ahead if it's over the objective for human health, obviously. But the NO2 objectives are actually going to be going down. That's what we've been hearing in the next year or two. They're expecting them to go down because of this finding that the health risks are more than they knew before. So Gordon Esplin recommended that they could put in new technology, to prevent that. There's SCR technology, catalyst technology, and of course they could move the siting to somewhere that's not so close to residents or to an existing source of NO2. And what I'm asking here in City Council, thank you for listening, is I've been really a bit frustrated about it, because Gordon, he knows Warren, he knows the MOE people, and he just thought once we pointed this out to them that, that the regulations, were changing, and that these concerns were there, that they would change the calculation, but they're not. They're sticking to it. And so I think we need to apply, some pressure. People have to know what's going on and make a point of looking at this. So I was hoping that the city would look over, I sent you Gordon Esplin's memo, and I imagine, you'd want to look over, for instance, that the data that they've used is actually from a rejected sheet and that. But I would really like it, hope that you would make a comment to the assessment process, asking that this be 30% be used, and then we make our decision based on that. And then one other thing, this isn't the only issue that I've got concerns about, and where it might be there might be underestimations, and but they take time to go through and to find experts to comment on them, and so I would also ask you to ask for some more time, because it's such a huge project. It's so much work to go through to find an issue, and then to go through all of the science and the background and the regulations before you can actually be sure that you're saying something correct. So, for instance, I'm worried that the ferry wasn't treated as a point source, which would average it out, and that they used ozone levels that were not conservative enough for the calculation. And so there's a few things that we're working on still. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thanks very much for your presentation and sharing your concerns. Is there any questions from members of council? Councillor Thorkelson?
Ms. Roth, have you brought your concerns to Mr. Seidemann, who is looking after the city's environmental assessment input?
I just sent him on.
If you could just press the green button, then people at home can hear you.
I sent him the first memo, but since we've got the response from them with those bunch of, I haven't got back to him from then. I think I did send him one thing, but I think there's so much volume of energy. I think you have to decide which to work on. So he hasn't got back to me on the second time.
Are there any further questions?
Could we get Mr. Seidemann to look at it? Because this is a lot of technical stuff here, and that's his field of expertise, and possibly make a recommendation for us. I can look at this, and I was never good at high school chemistry, and this is way above that. So I wouldn't mind getting an opinion from Hans.
Just a point of clarification, I should have mentioned this before, but the committee of the whole meeting issues aren't formally adopted, but we can make recommendations. So if that's something we want to entertain, then we can talk about that in the regular meeting. Thanks again very much for your presentation. And so with that reminder of the committee of the whole, I just want to add one thing before opening it up to question period from the public. Just a key point to remember, after you introduce yourself, if you want to speak, please keep your presentation brief. 5 minutes is ideal. It's important to remember, though, that no decisions will be made at this meeting on any requests or concerns, but will be referred to a further regular meeting of council. So with that, I'd like to move on to item 4A, which is opening up public comment on the 2016 annual report, which has been available in public for the last 2 weeks. So if anyone has any comment on the 2016 annual report, please come forward now.
Larry Golden, 1601 2nd Avenue West. I just wanted to point out some things there. In their ways are minor. I think this is almost symptomatic of it. I think this picture is from March of 2017. In here it says that the greatest snowfall, as I remember 2016, it was part of the blob sat around till late and a storm came in, and then we got the snowfall after the storm, which was in March of 2017. But that's neither here nor there. People can use what they want. But along the same lines, the next page gives the population of Prince Rupert as 13,766. Again, it's 2016, so a new census figure just came out, and the figure is 12,687. So we've lost 1,000 people. So this census figure just came out. Again, not necessary to be used. More to the point, though, is that these things are sort of like rote, we do this every year type thing. But the auditors for the audited financial statements, Carlisle and Shepherd, I think this might be critical. When you look at the date, it's May 8th, 2016. So the date of his he's filing his report is a year out. So it should be May 8th, 2017. That kind of thing. I used to be a shop steward and that kind of stuff. So these kind of things in the long run might be critical, because what you're accepting is this is as relevant as of a year ago. The other thing I wanted to bring out was sort of the positive news from this is that according to this figure, and hopefully it's right, the payment in lieu of taxes from the port was almost $1 million more in 2016 than it was in 2015. I think that reflects, hopefully that's not, the parking lot sale isn't in there somehow, but hopefully that just reflects that the port is doing much better work. So these documents are interesting, but I'd like to make a general comment on these documents. The city has started using its its utility rates. It used to be, so the utility rates they get it early in the year and then they use the money. And it used to be, so you really can't, and this is what one of the auditors or the province said, that you have to set aside a special fund in the water one, instead of just taking that money and using it for everything, and it's just becomes surplus in quotation marks, and then it's just used generically. But we should also set aside money for the sewage and the other one. Put it into a special form. See, this goes back to when the city really needed money, and so it just made things easier. So do you understand what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay. The other side of the coin is I'd like to look a little bit at the future, and since we potentially aren't going to worry about LNG, I would like to see the city devote its next year to trying to make our city more climate change active or something like that. The city has huge tracts of land which are just sitting there in either trees or salmon berries, and I note the salmon berries are probably a clone, just going for huge lots, and they don't have any berries on them. So in a sense, it's lost. I'd like to see us make more use of our lands, and make it much friendlier, and even think of putting up. Again, it was an idea that's been passed a number of times. Is we should almost start our own electric utility. So we've got Mount Hayes, we've got the ocean, the waters, and I would think that we could be putting solar panels up and stuff like that. So I'd like us to turn off from the LNG and look at the future, which is climate change and trying to adapt to that. The previous one, I'll throw you a little bit of technical information. A lot of those things about the partially coming out from the stacks and stuff like that totally depends on what direction the wind is blowing. So when you got the west wind blowing, then you'll get these high figures for the Graham Avenue. When you got a southeast blowing, it won't touch it. You got a northeast, it won't touch it, etc. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment on the 2016 annual report? I'll ask again if there's anyone else that wants to comment on the 2016 annual report. And if not, then we'll open up the floor for any questions that anyone might have that they'd like to address to council. Oh, sorry, Mr. Thorkelson.
I'd like to ask our city treasurer to clarify about our utilities accounts and whether any surplus from that is held for the utility or is rolled over into general operations, is what I thought I heard Mr. Golden say, and I'm quite concerned that be explained.
We have 4 funds. We have 3 utility funds and 1 general operating fund. And the surplus from any of the utility funds stays within their own fund. there is no rolling over into any general funds.
So if I clarify that, then the sewer fund, if there's a surplus, will remain in the sewer fund to do future sewer fund work. And in fact, that's how you have been organizing things. Is it to try to get a surplus in some funds in order to pay, say, help to pay for our water projects?
Anything that is a surplus in a particular utility fund stays in the particular utility fund. If there is ever a need to actually borrow for one fund, then it must be repaid back.
Thanks very much. So I'll call one final time.
And we can do this someplace else, but where would I be able to find this, how much is accumulated in each one of those funds? But is it in this, you're saying it's in this report right here?
I'd be happy to show you after the council meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn to reconvene our regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Motion carries. All right, so back to our regular meeting. Item 2, recommendation is that the agenda for the regular council meeting of June 26th be adopted as presented, with the exception of tabling agenda items 6A and B to be heard after agenda item 9B, being the third reading and adoption of the amendment bylaw number 3411 and zoning amendment bylaw 3412 in regard to the senior multiple family housing project at 700 Green Street. Moved by Councillor Randawa, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Motion carried. Item 3A, the recommendation is that the minutes of the special council meeting of June 12th be adopted. Moved by Councillor Niche. Seconded by Councillor Kinney. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Item 3B, recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 12th be adopted. Moved by Councillor Niche, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. And item 3C, the recommendation that the minutes of the public hearing meeting of June 12th, 2017 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Niche. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. So, moving to item 6C, report from the Communications Manager regarding the 2016 annual report. Given that the Communications Manager is not here, maybe I'll just ask Mr. Long if he wants to provide brief comment.
No, not really. The report speaks for itself, and I think we've had some input from the public, so I think we're ready to adopt it.
All right, I'd entertain the motion. Moved by Councillor Randawa, seconded by Councillor Niche. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Item 6D, report from the Chief Financial Officer regarding May 2017 financial variance report.
Thank you. As of May, all departments continue to be on target when compared to the budget and the previous year, except with respect to the roads as a result of the snowfall. Capital projects are now underway and payments will continue through the summer, and the utilities funds are on track as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Is there any questions on the report? Councillor Randawa?
How are we doing with the Cowboy Marina this year so far?
We're actually up. To date, we're actually doing quite well now that the marina is now in its full operational season. This is when most of the people are coming to utilize it. It's mainly for itinerant traffic, and the itinerant traffic is here, and so far things are good. It's been reported that the marina is pretty much full.
Is there any other questions on the report? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion. Moved by Councillor Niche. Seconded by Councillor Kinney. All those in favor? Motion carried. So moving on to item 6E, report from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the RCMP cell block compliance upgrades.
This one's going to be a bit of a longer report for me for the benefit of the viewers at home. So the Police Act requires that the local government with a population over 5,000 is responsible to provide an RCMP detachment. The Municipal Police Service Agreement and the Municipal Police Unit Agreement detail the detachment and the security standards. Over the past decade, the city has been made aware of deficiencies in the RCMP detachment. These deficiencies are in relation to the national changes in accommodation and security standards. In 2011, given the significant cost of correcting all of the deficiencies, Council decided it would be more cost-effective to have the entire detachment upgraded. In 2012, the city engaged the public on options for the new detachment to elicit feedback. The future financial prospects for the community were still unknown, and the taxpayers' feedback was that they were not willing to take on the burden. As such, Council shelved the project with the hopes that things would soon change. Since that time, the city has received 2 further letters from the RCMP indicating the building needs to be dealt with, but particularly the cell block. We are now in 2017, and the RCMP are no longer willing to postpone modifications to the cell block, which they consider the highest risk. The city again is in the process of investigating the options for a new detachment, even though the financial circumstance of the city is not much different than in 2012. The RCMP understand this and so have brought in a team to identify what modifications can be made to the existing cell block to improve prisoner safety and satisfy them in the near term. The city has engaged an architect to evaluate the preliminary drawings created by the provincial team. The project is feasible and is considered the best alternative, given the circumstances, which are that the new detachment is imminent but won't be built right away. In light of an eventual new detachment, staff has evaluated the alternatives of postponing the cell block upgrades given the probable short-term use of them. 3 alternatives were evaluated: 1, doing nothing; 2, using a temporary facility; or 3, increasing the number of guards. The result of doing nothing is that the RCMP will condemn the use of the cell block. This would result in transporting prisoners to other cells in the province. The city would be billed for transportation costs and still need to pay for the keep of prisoners in the other locations. This option would deplete our police force within the city, and estimates are that it would cost well in excess of $1 million annually until a new detachment was built. The temporary facility option was also reviewed. These facilities are utilized in emergency situations, for example, in the event of a detachment fire. The high cost associated as well as the location constraints resulted in staff discounting this as a feasible alternative. A third option was to double the guarding staff. This option doesn't address all of the deficiencies noted and results in a higher cost over the period of time until a new detachment could be constructed. Having analyzed all other options available, staff's recommendation is to proceed with further evaluating the upgrades to the existing cell block. Given that the cell block upgrades were not contemplated in the 2017 budget, Council must now consider and provide direction to staff to proceed. The purpose of this report is to obtain approval to proceed with the professional design consulting work, which will inform the construction cost for the cell block upgrades. The professional consultant cost, being architectural, mechanical, electrical, and structural consulting, is estimated at $100,000. The information obtained through the approval of this expenditure will help staff obtain a better understanding of the estimated construction cost. Once staff has a firm understanding of the construction cost associated, further approval from Council will be sought. Overall, staff proposes funding the entire project on a current basis through short-term financing. This translates into the costs of the cell upgrades being borne by the citizens experiencing the real-time benefits. The associated financial increase in the mill rate for the life of the proposed short-term loan is estimated to be 1%. Not this year. There are no grant options available for facility upgrades of this nature. Additionally, the utilization of Prince Rupert Legacy Inc. funds is not considered wise given there is no long-term benefit to the current or future community. Utilizing accumulated surplus for the entire construction is also not considered reasonable, given the surplus should be utilized for longer-term asset benefit and as an emergency fund for unforeseen events. Council is asked to direct staff to proceed with necessary professional consulting on the existing RCMP cell block, so construction costs may be ascertained, at which point staff will return to Council for direction to proceed with the cell block upgrades and the associated amendment to the 5-year financial plan bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Are there any questions? Councillor Randawa?
So, do we have $100,000 funding available?
No, that's why we're proposing using short-term financing to fund it.
Councillor Niche, then Councillor Thorkelson.
Well, I had a tour of the RCMP station there a couple months back, and before I stepped into that building, I kind of was under the opinion of, it can't be that bad. But after touring the building and seeing what their problems are, the building definitely needs to be replaced. And unfortunately, we're in the position of not being able to afford to do any of this. But if we don't do it, if we don't do something, at least a short-term fix, we're going to end up putting ourselves in a position where eventually they could just build an RCMP station and send us the bill. And if anyone has ever seen the RCMP station in Prince George, being a $60 million building, I would prefer that we don't build that. So I would like to have some input and be involved, and we have to do something. And unfortunately, we're going to have to borrow some money or do what we have to do to get the short-term fix to at least extend us to the time when we can move forward with a new police station, which up until a couple months ago when I toured it, I really didn't think it was needed, but after touring it, it is definitely needed.
Councillor Thorkelson, then Councillor Cunningham.
So if I understand this correctly, the $100,000 is just for consultant fees. So what happened to all of those consultant reports that the previous council did? Because I would, I guess I would like to know what staff is proposing on once we have the $100,000 fee. Then are we looking at a recommendation to build a brand new station, or are we just looking at a recommendation to fix a cell box?
We would be proposing a recommendation to fix the existing cell block, and that's what this $100,000 is going to be able to ascertain. We don't want to go to tender with inaccurate information in order to ensure that the scope is as limited as possible. The previous works that were done pre-2011, when the first few letters actually came, they actually proposed completely fixing all of the deficiencies in the cell block, amongst other things. So now that the provincial team came up and said that we understand that the city is in financial constraints, so we're accepting just doing the bare minimum. So there was changes to what is proposed, so we can't use the old documents.
And those old documents, they, knowing that construction costs have gone up, etc. But what were those old documents that were looking at the cost of renovating the cells? Do you know?
It was communicated to me that back then it was in excess of $1 million. This fix is not expected to cost that.
So it's just that it's $100,000 to do a $500,000 fix or $750,000 fix. That's why it just looks like a lot of money for a consultant where nothing gets done. Well, we already have the old plans, and if those old plans cost $1 million, I would be hoping that. I can't remember how much we spent. That last council spent on consultant fees, but it was certainly a lot of money. And I would hope that we should be able to use something from the past to lessen the costs, $100,000, and have nothing more than a couple of consultants draw some nice pictures that we already have is something that I just would rather spend the money on the building.
No one could agree more than myself. I do not like spending money twice. It's been told to me that the previous drawings would not actually work for what the new plan is, to mitigate the costs as best as possible so that we don't spend a pile more money upgrading the cells, knowing that we're going to be rebuilding a new detachment.
Councillor Cunningham?
Well, I know we're in kind of a financial state, but I agree with Councillor Nish here that sooner or later we got to bite the bullet and build a new station. And how much time is this going to buy us? And every year we wait to build a new station, the construction costs are just going up higher and higher. And it's something I think we've got to take a serious look at. If we keep putting Band-Aids on it, pretty soon the Band-Aids are going to fall off too. And it's something that has to be done. And I know other councils have struggled with this, and we're struggling too. But I really think that $100,000 to look at something, and that's 20% possibly, or more of the actual cost of doing the job. It seems quite high. I don't know. Maybe the RCMP have some consultants within their organization that could help us do it. I don't know, but it's just something that if we can find a way to cut down the consulting fees a bit, then it would be nice to do that.
Councillor Nish?
There's one number that really kind of got me on this whole RCMP station thing, and it was a number that was stated by the one fellow that was kind of in charge of that department that was in town, and he stated that for one person to die in a holding cell, it was anywhere from $500,000 to $20 million. It was a cost to the municipality. So to me, small investment. It does suck that we have to fix something once and then replace it, down the road here. But it could be a costly problem if something is not done. And that being said, I've seen the cells and I've seen the issues, and I do definitely agree that it does need to be fixed.
Councillor Cunningham?
I agree 100%. I was in on that tour. It's the first time I've been in those cells, and I don't think I'd want to spend a night in them. They don't look very comfortable. But that said, they're very dangerous, and they're not just dangerous to the people staying in there. They're dangerous to the actual members of the force and the jailers in there. It's a very volatile situation, and we've got to do something about it. I just want to try and do it in such a manner that, again, we're not spending a lot of money and then just throwing it out the window later on. This has to be done. Whatever it costs, it'll have to get done. But, I really think we should concentrate on a new police station as soon as possible, and any other frills we've got, cut them and get this done, because whether we go to a referendum or not, it doesn't matter. They're just going to build it, and here's the bill. And it's that simple, and it's something that's needed. And with the town increasing in size, it's a port town, more and more problems are coming. That facility is going to be used more and more.
Councillor Randawa?
Thank you. I was on that tour too, and I agree with both Councillor Cunningham and Nish. This facility needs some improvements immediately, but my only concern is if we can save some money on the consultation, that would be nice. Other than that, I think we need to upgrade that facility.
Right, well, I think this is a prime example of something we're all familiar with the can being kicked a little too far down the road, something we've experienced before. So with that, I'd entertain a motion. Moved by Councillor Kinney.
We direct staff to go ahead.
Okay, so the motion as it's been recommended. Okay, moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Nish. Any further discussion? Councillor Thorkelson?
Yeah, I'm concerned that that we're spending $100,000, and what I would suggest that we say a maximum of $100,000 to a maximum of $100,000. It just seems to me that's a lot of money to spend and come out of it with nothing but another study. Like, I was on the council in 2011 where we studied it and came up with nothing but an expensive study. That's all we did. And to do that again just seems to me to be a waste of taxpayers' money. And so, if we can use the past study as best as we can and not, that's why I'm saying a maximum of $100,000. That's what you're estimating it is. Is that correct?
Sorry, I think Ms. Baumann just had a response there.
I was just going to say that the documents were provided to me, and I put everybody on hold and said I had to go to council first for this. So it actually provides a small buffer of just a couple $1,000s. That's it. So it is under $100,000.
So that's a fairly simple amendment. If you guys are open to that friendly amendment, then okay. So the way that motion would read then is to a maximum of $100,000. Okay, so any further discussion? Councillor Niche?
I don't know if it was a wasted study, but it was definitely wasted because it was, the only reason why it was wasted is because it wasn't implemented. So now every time you don't implement the study, then you're basically throwing that money away. So by not moving forward with that, those at the time, which may have met all the standards at that time, now it's different. Now standards have changed. Now things are different. So now we got to go through this again. So, I'm hoping that we're going to move forward on this. So if the $100,000 gets spent, I hope we actually move forward with the study instead of just wasting money on a study and not doing anything about it. So, I get what you're saying about throwing money away, but especially with RCMP, that things change, and a study that's done 5 or 6 years ago is not going to be acceptable to today's standards for that RCMP station. So we may do things in a new RCMP station, and 5 years after that they're going to say, well, sorry, you can't use those toilets in the cell anymore, which is the exact prime example of what's going on right now. So they might have accepted something 5 years ago. Well, we can't use that study anymore. So if we're going to do a study, let's just make sure that we actually use that information and don't throw the $100,000 away and actually do something about it.
Right, well, we have the motion on the floor. So if there's no further discussion, I'd like to call a question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So moving on to item 8A, resolution from closed meetings. Can I turn that over to you, Mr. Corporate Administrator?
Yes, you can, Your Worship. It was a resolution from closed meetings on April the 24th, 2017. The following resolution with regards to the Prince Rupert Library Society board appointments was made. It was moved by Councillor Moreau and seconded by Councillor Renthawa that Council review the applicants for the Prince Rupert Library Board, and thusly appointed Mr. Kerry Dalton, Mr. Brent Patriquin, and Ms. Stephanie Lysick for a 2-year term to the board. And it was also moved that Council release this resolution at a future regular meeting of Council, and that was carried by all.
Thanks very much. And congratulations to all the appointees. I just want to thank you guys for putting your names forward, and we're looking forward to working with you. So moving on to item 9A, report from the Fire Chief regarding Fireworks Regulation Amendment Bylaw number 3415 to include the banning of sky lanterns. Given that he's not here, can I ask Mr. Long to speak to this?
Certainly. We debated this at the last meeting, and this is just the adoption of the bylaw.
Okay. Yeah, so if there's no discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Any final discussion? Councillor Cunningham?
Yeah, I've had a change of heart about this. I voted in opposition to it last time, and I was thinking more about a permit system or something so people could still do it and that. But I did some research in the last 2 weeks and found out that there's been quite a few fires caused by these, as well as a lot of other damage and environmental and things like that. So I'm definitely going to vote in favor of it this time.
Great. Thanks so much. So, with the motion on the floor, I'd like to call a question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. So item 9B, report from the city planner regarding the proposed Quality of Life Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 3411 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 3412 to permit senior multiple family housing project at 700 Green Street.
In fact, my report is same as the public hearing report, and at this time I can answer any question before council considers third and final reading.
Are there any final questions? Councillor Randawa?
Yeah, just like to find out like other senior housing like BC Housing, Macola, and even new one, Neptune, old Neptune, they are considering like 55 years old. So can we do something about this?
So again, to kind of repeat what we are doing here, we are passing a land use regulations, not necessarily concerned with the age. When council is concerned with the age of people who are residing in a certain project, they can ask for a covenant. The most important part of the council is trying to do here is to assure that there are seniors who will be living in that complex, and over a period of time they will not be young families who will be occupying that location, which has a number of circumstances that we talk about that goes along with that land use. It was completely left up to the applicant to make it what is their age, minimum age. They decided on 65. And I think that's appropriate, and I don't think that we should be spending any more time on it.
Councillor Niche?
I was going to ask you a question about the roof, but I think I should wait till we're in the next one for that one. Eh? Okay, so I won't worry about that.
So just a note in terms of process, if this first motion to amend the Quality of Life Official Community Plan, if that's defeated, then the other two motions become moot. So with that, I'd entertain a motion. Councillor Niche, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Any final discussion? Councillor Niche?
I just wanted to say that I feel this project would be I grew up in that neighborhood. I have spent many times in and out of that neighborhood over the years, and I think from the most part, we had really nobody show up to speak against it. We had one letter against it, and unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the public engagement because I was out of town. But from the sounds of it, most people were fairly supportive of it there. So, I think this can be a great revitalization of that neighborhood, and if it goes that way, I definitely would love to see it happen.
Councillor Kinney, and then Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also am very much in favor of it, as I'm one of those seniors. But it's needed. It's needed badly. And I would hate to think that these people have to move to the island or somewhere when this is their home. And I think we better go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Cunningham.
I live in the neighborhood and I won't have to go very far. No, I think it's a great project. I agree with Councillor Nice. It's just a big, ugly, empty lot right now, and this is going to enhance the whole neighborhood. I have talked to neighbors around there. No one seems to be overly concerned about it. There's been a few questions about parking or this or that, but they've all been answered by the proponents, so I don't see it being anything but an improvement and a great asset to the city, and it's we've needed senior housing. We've been beating on that drum for a while. This is a start in the right direction.
Councillor Thorkelson.
I too think that this is a great project, and I think that the architects have done a bang-up job. I really think that it's going to really add to the neighborhood, not detract from it. So I do disagree with the one letter that we do have that says that low-cost housing usually deteriorates and that it's not going to match in with the neighborhood. And I think this is going to be a real addition to the neighborhood, I think. And I'm really pleased that Metlakatla has decided to take this spot and use it really to the advantage of the whole community. And I think it will be something that people might drive down that road to have a look at for the next few years. It looks to me like it's going to be a very, very nice site. Yeah. And I'm really pleased. I want to thank them for doing all of the work and all of the sessions that they had to make sure that it meets their own community's desires as well as the desires of the people of the city of Rupert. And I think they've done an excellent job.
Absolutely. Councillor Cunningham?
One thing, I don't know if the public knows how much effort has gone into this project. They had, I think, 2 or 3 meetings well over a year ago at the Crest, just collecting ideas and things like that. And then there was some misunderstanding. I asked both Metlakatla, Taylor, and Ryan to come before the Seniors Center, and they came to a meeting and explained it all there. They've been very forthcoming with everything on this project, and I agree with Councillor Thorkelson. The design is just fantastic. I do think people will be looking at it, and not just from in town, but out of town too. They've really gone out of their way. They're probably spending a little bit extra on the outsides. It's anything but low cost. I'm quite sure if they wanted to cut corners, they could, and they could make a lot more money doing that than what they're doing. But they've taken the culture of the area, and they've taken a lot of First Nations designs in that, and incorporate it in the building, and that's not cheap. And I think it's going to be a great place and a great asset. Again.
All right, well, I'd just like to echo that and say a lot of the times, a lot of people overlook process for the sake of the product, and I think in this case, you guys were able to strike a really good balance, so it's much appreciated. So with that, Mr. Mandrick, do we have the motion on the floor?
We do, Your Worship.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to call the question. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. So moving then to item 6A, which was originally tabled just for procedure. Report from the city planner regarding the application for the development variance permit on 700 Green Street.
Next 2 reports are development permits. The first one is development.
Sorry, just your microphone, Mr. Craig.
Sorry. So the next 2 reports are related to the approval that you've just passed. The first one is a development variance permit to vary the maximum height, which is represented here. The maximum height in the new zone that the property is sitting is 9 meters. The request is to raise it to 13.9 meters to specifically address interesting design, which is something that our design guidelines are seeking in multifamily development projects, and this variance is to accommodate that part of our requirement in development permit design guidelines. And
thanks very much. And Councillor Nish had a question.
So when I look at that picture up there, I really have no issue with the height variance as far as what they want to build there. And as stated in the one letter that was against this project, the lady, or I'm not too sure if it was lady or man, they were stating that because of the height, they were not in favor of it either. The only thing that I'm asking is that is pretty unobtrusive, and it's a detail that I feel will make the building look better and not just look like a big box. But if we were to approve that height variance, let's just say they decided not to move forward and somebody else moved forward with that property. Now, my concern is I wouldn't want to see that height all the way across that building. So are we able to protect ourselves from that happening? Because I don't think that it's right to say go to that height variance for the whole building. So I just want to know, I understand it's kind of written in there that it's for this architectural feature, but are we able to make sure that that's the only reason for this?
So between the development variance permit and development permit, both are registered at the land title office, and both are registered against the file that you approve. So this development variance permit is specifically for this project. If somebody would come in and seek another project and try to indicate that they can build to a higher, to an extra. Would this give you another floor? It wouldn't give you another. It wouldn't give you full floor.
You could probably build another floor. Well, I mean, 9 feet. You could build another floor with a little bit of creativity. Whether you bury it in the ground a little bit more or whatever. So you could add a third floor to that if you tweaked some things, and that's all I'm concerned with, because it's as the picture shows, it's a 2-story building with a roof on it. So I don't really have an issue with that.
So just to finish, then, if somebody would come back here and come to say that I would like to add another floor for a project that's going to now have a second floor, there are 2 things. Number one, this development variance permit is specifically for this project, and then we're going to have a development permit, which is further going to restrict the project to what you see is what you get. On the other hand, they're very close to their maximum density on the project, so they wouldn't be able to put another floor without applying for another zone.
Councillor Cunningham?
Just a question I asked before and never got an answer to it because the developer hadn't decided yet what material is going to be on that. Have they come up with an answer to that?
I believe it's going to be copper. Yeah.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Niche. Any final discussion? No. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And second tabled item, 6B, report from the city planner again regarding an application for the development permit for the same development.
Just give me a second. So this is the development permit, which essentially at this point in time, without repeating all the stock information why we're here and when the application was submitted, at this stage of the project development and just prior to the building permit, what we look is in a form and shape. And the full application is attached to your report, which is voluminous. I've just selected a few sections and a few renderings and a few drawings to kind of show you essentially what we look at. So we look at the materials. We look at the materials. We don't in multiple family design guidelines. We don't look at the coloring, but this project and this designer and this applicant have gone to the extent of going to the full details. Again, this is a section of the townhouses. Again, there's going to be a lot of material interchange with designs. Then we look at the geometric designs. We look at to make sure that they can fit all the parking places that they say they can fit, and the size of the parking places, the turning radiuses for the streets. When we look at the engineering drawings, water and sewer connections to the city services, which is then looked at by both engineering and fire departments to assure that it's all done good. And we have landscape design plans and the lighting design plans, and so this is the whole package, and the proposed project complies with all the multifamily design guidelines. And our staff recommendation is to issue development permit number 1702.
Thanks very much. Is there any final questions? Councillor Thorkelson?
I do want to point out that, and I want to point out about the difference between when we first started looking at projects, not this project, but 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when developers were coming to projects, and were just plunking buildings down in the middle of the lot. This looks to me like something that we want to strive for, which is with green spaces, some interesting architectural features, but particularly the gathering places. This building is set up so people can gather together and talk and be a village, as it says. And I really think that this is the kind of development. Of course, we'll see when it finishes if it does everything that it looks like it's going to do on paper. But this is the kind of village on paper that I would like to see, instead of some of those other proposals which are just which haven't proposed the green space or the space that we've been talking about, where people can actually meet and enjoy their kids or their grandchildren for a few hours and enjoy life with, it's a real place that people will want to live, and that's what we should be making in Prince Rupert. And this one is only short by 5 or 6 to the maximum allowable.
Yeah, they're 4 under the maximum allowable.
Right. So it's almost at the maximum allowable. Like, there hasn't been a lot of sacrifice of units in order to get the kind of the kind of features that are going to make this a livable and lovely site to have. And so this is what developers should be looking for in Prince Rupert. That's all my message is. And I think that we've done a lot of work as a council, and now we have an example of what what would be a good place for future developers to look at, the kind of standards that this building has.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thorkelson. And I couldn't agree more. I think that just puts the onus on us to move forward on our multifamily design guidelines. Mr. Mandrick, did I have a mover and a seconder for that motion? Okay, so I'd entertain moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Any final discussion? Seeing none, I'd like to call a question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. So congratulations to the developer, and thank you, staff, for all your hard work on this project. Looking forward to seeing how everything unfolds. So the final item on the agenda is reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council. Councillor Cunningham?
As everyone's aware, we topped the polls in the BCAA for McKay Park, and I'd like to thank all the people that supported it and all the businesses that put the posters up in that. And I'd also like to remind people now that Veronica Stewart has a GoFundMe page for it. You can go to it and donate money if you want.
Thanks for that. Yeah, $100,000 will be a good start. Any other questions or reports from council? Councillor Thorkelson, and then Councillor Niche.
Well, I'm hoping that perhaps to the next council meeting we're going to be talking about community naming And we had in our package, which was postponed, a thing about a community naming committee. And I wanted to, so it's not really a notice of motion, although I could make it a notice of motion. But what this is something, I suppose, it is a notice for discussion. How's that? And because I was very concerned that when I saw the idea of having a community naming committee, that we didn't have a policy on how we should direct this committee to name things. So I was going to suggest that we need to have a policy, and that our policy should be, and never mind the words, because the words can always be changed. But this is the idea that I'd like to have this discussed. In recognition that Prince Rupert is situated in the traditional territory of the Tsimshian First Nations, and a large majority of place and street names already established within the city do not reflect Tsimshian culture or heritage, at least 75% of the new names will be of Tsimshian culture or heritage and written in Smelliak. The community shall, as well as in English, the committee shall submit, and this is the part I thought maybe this is cumbersome, and maybe what we should ask is have the community submit appropriate names. But what I wrote here was the committee shall submit a proposed name to Metlakatla, Lakwalams, Kitkatla, Kitgat, and Kitsum Kalim to ensure that there are no objections, because what we didn't want to do, I didn't want to see us name something that was historically incorrect or that was a divisive name. So maybe it would be better to ask the communities to give us names that would be acceptable. Street signs written in Smelliak should also include an English translation. When street signs are needed in replacement, when present street signs are in need of replacement, and if a street name now written in English is translatable, so that's somebody's name, like George Hill Way is not really translatable, right? A name now written in English is translatable into Smelliak. Smelliak name shall also be added to the sign. It's a policy, not just having a naming committee deciding on what kind of what I would consider white, middle class or upper class male names we can add to the streets of Prince Rupert, or how many more Charles Hayeses we can have. I would suggest that we need a policy, and I think that in recognition that almost 50% of our community is First Nations, and that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Tsimshian, that I would suggest that we develop some kind of a policy that reflects that. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think just for the sake of procedure, we should treat that as a notice of motion so that we can get that on the agenda and have the discussion. Otherwise, we won't have the structure to debate.
Well, I can certainly make it a notice. The reason I hadn't cleaned up the language and I didn't have it printed out for everybody, so that's why I started giving notice for discussion. But yes.
Okay, so maybe not the next agenda, but whenever you get the wording
right.
done, then you can just submit to Mr. Mandrick. Okay. Excellent. Councillor Niche.
I was just going to add on to Councillor Cunningham's remarks about the McKay Street Park, and all I just wanted to add was I'd just like to give a big thanks to our mayor, who put a lot of time and effort into putting it out there on Facebook and kind of threatening people to vote. So I think he did a great job, and obviously the group, the Transition Prince Rupert, and all the groups that are involved in bringing it forward, they did a great job of promoting it for sure.
Definitely, yeah. Councillor Kinney.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say, it's too bad the rest of the world couldn't come and see Prince Rupert the way we are, and how we can live side by side and still have a great place. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Kinney. Is there any final reports or questions? If not, I probably should have started the meeting by saying, obviously, I am not the mayor. He's away on vacation, and I'm just filling in for the next couple of weeks. But yeah, that reminded me, Councillor Niche, he deserves some credit for his relentless push on Facebook for that project. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Motion carried.